Commander Jathik stood on the bridge of the Eternal Vigil, his three eyes scanning the holographic displays that floated before him. The massive warship hung in the darkness of space, silent and watchful. For 200 years, the Galactic Council had maintained this position. For 200 years, they had guarded the line. The line was not visible to the naked eye. It was simply a boundary in space, marked by satellites and monitoring stations. Beyond that invisible wall lay the Sol system, home to a species called humanity. The Council had put them there, locked them away from the rest of the galaxy. Some called it protection, others called it a prison. Jathik called it necessary. "All stations report normal activity, Commander," said his second officer, a young Vrelnati female named Shiral. Her scales reflected the blue light from the displays. "The quarantine zone remains secure." Jathik nodded slowly. His people, the Vrelnati, were patient by nature. They could wait for centuries if needed. But even patience had limits. The humans had been behind the line for so long now. Sometimes he wondered if they ever thought about breaking free. 200 years ago, a Council survey vessel had entered the Sol system. It was a routine mission, or so they thought. The ship carried scientists and diplomats, all eager to meet a new species. What they found was not what they expected. The humans attacked without warning. They used primitive weapons, chemical rockets, and nuclear warheads. The survey ship barely escaped. Half the crew died. The survivors brought back horror stories of a violent, aggressive species that shot first and never asked questions. The Council debated for months. Some wanted to destroy humanity before they could become a threat. Others argued for patience and understanding. In the end, they chose containment. They built the line and told humanity to stay behind it. Any ship that crossed would be destroyed. That was 200 years ago. Since then, silence. The humans never tried to contact the Council. They never attempted to cross the line. It was as if they had accepted their fate. "Commander," Keelm called from the science station. The insect-like Trithnari clicked his mandibles nervously. "I'm detecting unusual readings from inside the quarantine zone." Jathik moved to the science station, his heavy footsteps echoing in the quiet bridge. "What kind of readings?" "Energy signatures. Multiple sources. They're moving toward the line." Keelm's antennae twitched. "Sir, these signatures are stronger than anything we've detected from humanity before." A cold feeling spread through Jathik's body. "How many sources?" "Counting now. At least 100, no more. Still counting." Keelm looked up, his compound eyes reflecting genuine fear. "Commander, there are hundreds of ships approaching the line." The bridge fell silent. Every crew member turned to stare at the main display. Jathik felt his heart beating faster. This was it. After 200 years, the humans were making their move. "Sound alert status," Jathik ordered. "Notify Council Fleet Command. Activate all defense platforms." Red lights began flashing throughout the ship. Across the entire fleet, thousands of vessels received the same message. The humans were coming. Counselor Mazir appeared on the communication screen. The elderly Fashir looked tired, his gray skin sagging with age. "Commander Jathik, I just received your alert." "Is this confirmed?" "Yes, Counselor. Human vessels are approaching the line in force. We count at least 300 ships, possibly more." Mazir closed all four of his eyes. "This is what I feared. This is why we kept them contained. They're too aggressive, too unpredictable." He opened his eyes again. "You have authorization to use necessary force. Do not let them cross the line." The communication ended. Jathik stared at the empty screen for a moment. Use necessary force. That meant war. That meant killing. "Sir, the human ships are still approaching," Shiral reported. "They're not slowing down." "Broadcast on all frequencies," Jathik ordered. "Tell them to stop immediately or we will fire." The communications officer, a Helixian with long, flexible fingers, worked quickly. "Broadcasting now, sir. All known human frequencies." They waited. The seconds felt like hours. The human ships continued forward, now less than 1 million kilometers from the line. "Any response?" Jathik asked. "Nothing, Commander. They're ignoring our warnings." Jathik's mind raced. If they crossed the line, he would have to fire. If he fired, thousands would die. But if he let them through, what message would that send? That the Council was weak? That containment meant nothing. "Fleet Formation Delta," he commanded. "All ships, battle positions. Charge weapons." Across the void, the Council fleet moved into position. 2,000 warships, the pride of 12 different species, formed a wall of steel and energy, their weapons powered up, ready to unleash destruction. The human ships crossed the line. They've breached the quarantine zone, Shiral shouted. Commander, what are your orders? Jathik opened his mouth to give the order to fire. But something stopped him. The human ships were not attacking. They were simply moving forward, steady and purposeful. There was no aggression in their formation. They looked almost peaceful. Incoming transmission, the communications officer announced. It's from the human fleet. Sir, they're speaking in Galactic Standard. Jathik's blood ran cold. Galactic Standard. That was impossible. Humans had been isolated for 200 years. How could they know the common language of the Council? Put it through, a voice filled the bridge. It was human, speaking with careful precision. Council fleet, this is the human vessel Defiance. We are not here to fight. We are here to talk. We know you're out there. We've known for decades. Murmurs spread across the bridge. Kel made a chittering sound of surprise. Shiral's scales changed color, showing her shock. How? Jathik whispered. Then louder. How do you know our language? How did you detect us? The human voice continued calm and steady. 200 years ago, you left something behind when your survey ship fled our system. Debris, wreckage, technology, we studied it. We learned from it. We've been listening to your communications ever since. We know about the Council. We know about the species that make it up. We know about your laws, your culture, your wars. Jathik felt dizzy. The humans had been watching them. Learning. All this time, the Council thought they were in control, thought they were the ones doing the observing. But the humans had turned the tables. You have no right to cross the line, Jathik said, trying to sound authoritative. Return to your system immediately. There was a pause. Then laughter. A human laugh, strange and alien to Vrelnathi ears. Commander, we spent 200 years in a cage. We're done asking for permission. We're claiming our right to the stars. Stand aside or don't, but we're not going back. More ships appeared on the sensors. Not hundreds, thousands. They had been hiding using some kind of camouflage technology the Council couldn't detect. Kelm stared at his instruments in disbelief. Commander, I'm reading over 3,000 human vessels now. Where do they all come from? Jathik didn't answer. He was watching the main display, watching the human fleet spread out before him like a vast net. They had played the Council perfectly. They had appeared weak, isolated, contained. But all along they had been building, growing, preparing. The Defiance transmitted again. We request formal parley with Council leadership. We have much to discuss. The galaxy is bigger than you know, and the threats are greater than you imagine. You need us, Council fleet. You just don't know it yet. Jathik looked around his bridge. Every face showed the same expression. Fear, wonder, confusion. The careful order of 200 years had shattered in moments. Send the message to Council headquarters. Jathik said quietly. Tell them humanity has entered the line. Tell them everything has changed. The Council response came within hours. Do not engage unless attacked. Attempt all first contact protocols. Stall until reinforcements arrive. Jathik read the orders 3 times. Stall. As if the humans were some minor problem that could be managed with procedure and patience. But looking at the thousands of ships on his display, he knew better. This was not a problem. This was a revolution. Begin first contact protocols, he ordered. Sequence Alpha 1. The Council had developed these protocols over thousands of years. They were designed to communicate with any intelligent species, no matter how different. Mathematics was universal. Patterns were universal. Surely the humans would understand. The communications officer sent out the first sequence. Prime numbers. 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, simple, clear. A message that said, we are intelligent beings who wish to communicate. The human response came immediately. They sent back the next 20 prime numbers in perfect order, then added a message. We learned your protocols from your databases. Do you have anything new to say? Kelm made a nervous clicking sound. They hacked our databases? When? How? That debris from 200 years ago, Jathik said bitterly. They must have recovered computer systems. Probably spent decades breaking our encryption. He felt a grudging respect for the humans. They were clever. Dangerously clever. Try Protocol Beta 3, he ordered. Universal friendship greeting. The communications officer transmitted complex geometric patterns and color sequences that had been proven to create positive emotional responses in over 50 known species. The council had refined these greetings over millennia. The humans responded with a simple message. Pretty pictures. Now can we talk like adults? Several crew members made sounds of shock. Shiral's scales flushed orange with embarrassment. The humans were mocking them. Counselor Mazir appeared on the screen again, this time with other council members visible behind him. Commander, we're watching your transmissions. The humans are being deliberately provocative. Show them the consequences of crossing the line. Fire warning shots. Jothik hesitated. Counselor, with respect, I don't think warning shots will... That's an order, Commander. Jothik gestured to his weapons officer. Target empty space ahead of the human formation. Plasma cannons only fire. Blue bolts of superheated plasma shot across the void. Each shot contained enough energy to vaporize a small moon. They streaked toward the human ships calculated to pass just ahead of their formation. But the shots never made it past the human fleet. Point defense systems, small and precise, intercepted every single plasma bolt. The shots exploded harmlessly in space, creating brief flowers of light that faded quickly. They stopped our warning shots, the weapons officer said, his voice shaking. Sir, those systems are incredibly precise. Better than anything we have. Jothik pulled up the analysis data. The human point defense had reacted in microseconds. The targeting was perfect. This wasn't luck. This was technology that exceeded council standards. How is this possible? Mazir demanded from the screen. They were primitives 200 years ago. Chemical rockets and nuclear weapons. How did they advance so quickly? Kelm spoke up, his scientific mind working through the problem. Counselor, humans have shorter lifespans than most council species. They live perhaps 80 to 100 of their years. That means they've gone through multiple generations since first contact. Each generation building on the last, each one pushing harder, faster. And they were motivated, Jothik added. We locked them in a cage. Every human child grew up knowing there was a galaxy beyond their reach. That kind of pressure either breaks a species or makes them stronger. Clearly it made them stronger, Shiral said quietly. The main display suddenly filled with new contacts. More human ships appeared, materializing out of empty space like ghosts becoming solid. The fleet count jumped from 3,000 to 5,000, then 6,000, then 7,000. Stealth technology, Kelm breathed. They've been hiding additional ships. We couldn't even detect them. The human voice returned, the same calm tone as before. Council fleet, we're showing you our full strength now. We could have stayed hidden. We could have surprised you. But we're not here for war. We're here for recognition. A new image appeared on all council displays. A human face. The creature had two eyes, forward-facing like a predator. Brown skin, black hair cut short. Male probably based on the facial structure. He wore a dark uniform with symbols that meant nothing to council species. I am Admiral Chen Wei of the Terran Space Force. I speak for humanity. We have a proposal for the Galactic Council. Mazir leaned forward. The Council does not negotiate with species who break containment protocols. Then you're fools, Chen Wei said bluntly. While you've been watching us, we've been watching you. Specifically, we've been watching your war. Silence filled every council ship within range. Jothik felt his blood turn cold. What war? Mazir asked, but his voice was weak. Chen Wei smiled. It was not a friendly expression. The war you've been fighting for 80 years. The war against the Krith swarm. The war you're losing. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Jothik could see dozens of council members shouting at their screens. The Krith war was classified at the highest levels. Only military commanders and top council leadership knew the full extent of the threat. How do you know about the Krith? Jothik demanded. Your communications aren't as secure as you think, Chen Wei replied. We've intercepted battle reports, casualty lists, resource allocation requests. We've watched you lose system after system. We've seen your retreat strategies, and we've analyzed your tactics. Another human appeared next to Chen Wei. This one was female with dark skin and gray hair. She wore different clothing, more formal. I am Ambassador Sarah Okonkwo. I speak for Earth's diplomatic corps. The Krith swarm is spreading from the galactic edge inward. Your defensive strategies are failing because you're fighting a war of containment. You cannot contain the Krith. You can only destroy them. And you think you can do better? Mazir asked scornfully. We know we can, Okonkwo said. Because we've been preparing. For 50 years, humanity has been running simulations. We've studied every Krith battle. We've analyzed their tactics, their biology, their technology. We know their weaknesses. Chen Wei touched a control. New displays appeared showing battle scenarios. Human ships engaged Krith vessels in dozens of different situations. The tactics were aggressive, brutal, and effective. You fight defensively, Chen Wei explained. You protect your worlds and wait for the Krith to attack. Then you respond. By then it's too late. You're always reacting, never acting. He highlighted a human strategy. We would fight offensively. We would take the battle to the Krith. We would board their ships, destroy their command nodes, disrupt their hive communications. We would make them afraid. The Council does not approve of such aggressive warfare, Mazir said stiffly. Then the Council will die, Chen Wei said simply. The Krith don't care about your approval. They don't negotiate. They don't surrender. They consume and they expand. The only language they understand is force. Okonkwo stepped forward. We're offering you a choice, Council. Grant humanity full membership. Give us access to your technology, your intelligence, your resources. In return, we'll help you fight the Krith. We'll show you how to win. And if we refuse? Mazir asked. Chen Wei's smile returned, cold and hard. Then we'll go fight the Krith ourselves. We'll prove our worth by saving the worlds you can't. And when we've pushed the Krith back, when we've done what you couldn't do in 80 years, we'll return. And then we'll have this conversation again. But by then you won't be negotiating from strength. You'll be begging for our help. Jathik watched the council members on his screen. They were angry, frightened, and desperate all at once. The humans had backed them into a corner. Accept them as equals or be humiliated by watching them succeed where the council had failed. This is blackmail, Mazir said. This is reality, Okonkwo replied gently. We're not your enemies, Council. We could have been. We had every reason to hate you after 200 years of imprisonment. But we learned something during those years. We learned patience. We learned to think long-term. And we learned that the galaxy is too dangerous for any species to face alone. Chen Wei nodded. We need each other. You need our tactics and our willingness to take risks. We need your knowledge and your resources. Together we can stop the Krith. Divided we all fail. The transmission ended. The human ships held their position, waiting. Jathik looked at his crew. Every face showed the same confusion he felt. The humans had come with overwhelming force, but they were asking for partnership. They had demonstrated superiority, but they were offering cooperation. It didn't match any profile the council had developed. They're not what we expected, Kelm said softly. No, Jathik agreed. They're worse or better. I can't decide which. On his screen, Mazir was arguing with other council members. Jathik couldn't hear the conversation, but he could see the result. The council was divided. Some saw opportunity, others saw only threat. But looking at the 7,000 human ships that hung before him, Jathik knew one thing with certainty. Everything had changed. The galaxy would never be the same. The neutral station hung at the edge of the line like a pearl in darkness. It had been built centuries ago for exactly this purpose, negotiations between species that didn't trust each other. The station was automated, protected by powerful shields, and designed to self-destruct if anyone tried to take control by force. Jathik had never actually been to the station before. In 200 years of guarding the line, there had been no need. Now he walked its corridors with careful steps flanked by 2 guards. They were heading to the central meeting chamber where history would be made or broken. The chamber was circular, with seats arranged in a ring. No position was superior to another. No species sat above the rest. It was designed for equality, though Jathik suspected that design would be tested today. Council members were already present. Mazir sat with other senior councilors representing 12 different species. They wore their finest formal clothing, colors, and styles from a dozen worlds. They looked impressive and important. Then the humans arrived and everything changed. Admiral Chen Wei entered first, walking with the easy confidence of someone who had nothing to prove. Ambassador Okonkwo followed carrying a data tablet. Behind them came 6 other humans, military officers and diplomats. They wore simple uniforms, dark blue with silver details. No fancy decorations. No excessive displays of rank, but they didn't need decorations. Their presence alone commanded respect. Jathik studied them carefully. Humans were smaller than most council species. They had only 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes. Physically, they seemed unremarkable, but there was something in the way they moved. Purpose, direction, like predators who had chosen not to hunt but could change their mind at any moment. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," Okonkwo said. She spoke Galactic Standard perfectly with only a slight accent. "We understand this situation is unusual." "Unusual?" Mazir's voice was sharp. "You broke a 200-year quarantine. You invaded council space with military force. You threaten us with ultimatums. This goes far beyond unusual." Chen Wei smiled slightly. "We prefer to think of it as making a dramatic entrance." Several council members made sounds of outrage. Kelm, sitting near Jathik, clicked nervously. But Jathik found himself almost amused. The humans had a strange sense of humor about serious matters. "Let's be clear about the situation," Okonkwo said, her tone becoming more formal. "Humanity has been imprisoned for 2 centuries because of one violent encounter. An encounter that happened when we were barely beginning to explore our own solar system. We've changed since then. We've grown, but you never gave us a chance to prove it." "You proved your nature," Mazir replied. "Violence is what you understand. Violence is what everyone understands," Chen Wei said coldly. "The difference is we're honest about it. You dress up warfare with protocols and procedures, but in the end you point weapons at problems just like we do. The only difference is we're better at it." Counselor Traven, a tall Helixian with golden skin, leaned forward. "You claim to understand the Krith threat. Prove it. What do you know about them?" Okonkwo touched her tablet. Holographic displays filled the center of the chamber. Images of Krith vessels, battle formations, attack patterns. Data scrolled past hundreds of pages of analysis. "The Krith are a hive-minded species," Okonkwo began. "Individual units have limited intelligence, but collectively, they form a sophisticated command structure. They communicate through quantum entanglement, which makes their coordination nearly perfect. They don't feel fear. They don't negotiate. They exist only to consume resources and expand." "We know all this," Traven said impatiently. "Then you know their weakness," Chen Wei said. "Disrupt the command nodes and the swarm falls apart. The individual units lose coordination. They become easy targets." "We've tried attacking command nodes," Jathik said. "They're too well protected. We lose dozens of ships trying to break through their defenses." "Because you attack from outside," Chen Wei replied. "You use long-range weapons trying to break through their shields. We would board them." The chamber fell silent. Boarding actions were considered barbaric, a tactic from primitive times. Modern warfare was conducted at distance with energy weapons and missiles. The idea of actually entering an enemy ship was almost unthinkable. "You can't be serious," Mazir said. "We're completely serious," Chen Wei said. "Small teams, heavily armed, using stealth insertion. Get inside their shields, fight through their corridors, destroy the command nodes from within. It's dangerous. Many will die. But it works? How do you know it will work?" Kelm asked, his scientific curiosity overcoming his fear. Okonkwo smiled. "We've tested it. Not against the Krith, obviously, but against simulated Krith defenses. We built mock-ups of their ships based on your battle reports. We trained thousands of Marines in close-quarters combat. We ran scenarios for 30 years. She pulled up new images. Human soldiers in heavy armor, carrying weapons that looked brutal and efficient. Training facilities that recreated alien environments, endless drills and exercises. You prepared for a war you weren't even part of, Traven said, sounding impressed despite himself. We prepared for the war we knew was coming, Chen Wei corrected. The Krith won't stop at council borders. Eventually they'll reach Seoul. We'd rather face them with allies than alone. Mazir stood up, his 4 hands clenched in anger. This is what I warned the council about. This is why we kept humanity contained. You're too aggressive, too militaristic. You think only of war and violence. No, Okonkwo said firmly. We think of survival. There's a difference. We don't want war, Council. We want peace, but we're willing to fight for it. She stepped closer to Mazir, meeting his eyes without fear. You want to know the real reason you kept us behind the line? It wasn't because we attacked one ship 200 years ago. It was because you were afraid of what we'd become if you gave us access to your technology. Mazir said nothing. You were right to be afraid, Okonkwo continued, but not for the reasons you think. You weren't afraid we'd conquer you. You were afraid we'd show you what you've forgotten, that sometimes survival requires sacrifice, that sometimes you have to take risks, That sometimes you have to be willing to fight instead of just defend. She pulled up another display. This one showed council battle reports from the past 80 years. A steady pattern of retreat, of worlds lost, of populations evacuated. A long, slow defeat. In 80 years of fighting the Krith, you've never won a major offensive operation. Okonkwo said quietly. You've saved lives through evacuation. You've delayed them with defensive positions. But you've never actually pushed them back. Not once. The council members looked at the data. No one could deny it. We can change that, Chen Wei said. Give us a chance. One battle. Let us prove our tactics work. If we fail, you can send us back behind the line and forget we ever crossed it. But if you succeed, we grant you full council membership, Traven finished. He looked at Mazir. It's a reasonable offer. It's a trap, Mazir said. They'll prove themselves in one battle, join the council, and then gradually take control. They'll remake us in their image. Or, Jothik said, speaking for the first time in the meeting, they'll help us survive. And isn't that worth the risk? Mazir turned to glare at him. Commander, you're supposed to support the council's position. I do support the council, Jothik said calmly. I support keeping the council alive. The humans are offering us a weapon we desperately need. Their tactics may be brutal, but they may also be effective. Can we afford to refuse? The other council members began talking among themselves. Arguments filled the chamber. Some agreed with Mazir, seeing only danger in accepting humans. Others saw opportunity, a chance to finally turn the tide against the Krith. Okonkwo waited patiently while they debated. Chen Wei stood with his arms crossed, watching everything with those predator eyes. The other humans remained silent, letting their leader speak for them. Finally, Traven raised his hand for silence. I propose a compromise. We allow humanity to participate in the next defensive operation against the Krith. They will fight alongside council forces. If their tactics prove effective, we will reconsider their membership status. That's barely different from their original proposal, Mazir protested, but it gives us control. Traven replied. They fight under our command. They follow our rules of engagement. If they prove too aggressive or dangerous, we can end the partnership. Chen Wei and Okonkwo looked at each other. Some silent communication passed between them. Then Okonkwo nodded. We accept, she said. Under one condition. If we prove our worth, the membership vote happens immediately. No delays, no further tests. One battle, one chance, agreed, Traven said. He looked around the chamber. All in favor? Hands were raised. Not all of them. Mazir kept his four hands firmly down, but enough supported the motion. The vote passed. Then it's decided, Traven announced. Humanity will fight alongside the council fleet. May the void have mercy on us all. Jothik watched the humans as they left the chamber. They walked with satisfaction, like hunters who had successfully stalked their prey. But there was something else too, relief. They had genuinely wanted this partnership. For all their strength and confidence, they had been worried the council would refuse. Kelm clicked quietly beside him. Do you think we made the right choice? Jothik thought about that the alarm came during the night shift, 3 days after the negotiation. Jothik was sleeping in his quarters when the emergency lights flooded his room with red illumination. He was on the bridge within 2 minutes, still fastening his uniform. Report, he ordered. Shiral was at her station, her scales pale with stress. Krith swarm, sir. Massive force. They've entered the Terath system, 3 jumps from here. 2 billion civilians on those worlds. Jothik felt ice in his chest. The Terath system was a core council territory. 3 populated planets, dozens of orbital stations. If it fell, millions would die before they could evacuate. Council fleet is scrambling, Shiral continued. Every available ship is being called to defend Terath, including us, and including the human fleet. Status of human forces? Already moving, sir. They began acceleration the moment the alarm sounded. They'll reach Terath before we do. Jothik pulled up the tactical display. The Krith force was enormous, at least 500 vessels, maybe more. The council could bring perhaps 400 ships to the defense. Not good odds, but they'd faced worse. The Eternal Vigil jumped to hyperspace along with the rest of the fleet. The journey would take 6 hours. 6 hours to prepare, 6 hours to wonder if they would live or die. On the bridge, no one spoke. They had all fought the Krith before. They knew what was coming. When they emerged from hyperspace at Terath, the battle had already begun. The humans hadn't waited. The display showed chaos. Krith vessels swarmed around the three planets like insects around rotting fruit. Their ships were organic-looking things grown rather than built. They moved in perfect coordination, never colliding, never confused. The hive mind controlled them all, and fighting through that swarm were the human ships. Jothik had expected the humans to fight from range, using their advanced weapons to pick off Krith vessels. Instead, they fought like madmen. Human ships dove straight into the thickest Krith formations, firing at point-blank range. They rammed Krith vessels when their weapons overheated. They used the destroyed wrecks of enemy ships as shields while they reloaded. "They're going to get themselves killed," Kelm whispered. But they weren't dying, at least not fast enough to matter. For every human ship destroyed, they took down 4 or 5 Krith vessels. The exchange rate was brutal but effective. "Council Fleet, this is Admiral Chen Wei," the transmission came through. "Good timing. We've been keeping them busy, but there's too many. We need your heavy firepower on the command ships." Jothik pulled up the tactical analysis. The humans had identified the Krith command vessels. There were 3 of them. Massive bioships that coordinated entire sections of the swarm. Destroying them was the key to victory. It always had been, but they were too well protected, surrounded by hundreds of smaller Krith ships. "Admiral Chen, those vessels are behind defensive screens we can't penetrate," Jothik replied. "We'll get you through," Chen Wei said. "Follow our lead. And Commander? This is going to get rough. Tell your crew to hold on." What followed was the most insane combat maneuver Jothik had ever witnessed. The human fleet formed a wedge with their heaviest ships at the point. They accelerated directly at the Krith defensive screen, absorbing terrible damage. Ships exploded. Hulls were torn apart, but the wedge didn't break. They smashed through the Krith lines like a spear through flesh. "All ships follow the human wedge," Jothik ordered. "Pour fire into the command ships." The Council fleet followed, protected by the corridor of destruction the humans had carved. Council warships unleashed their most powerful weapons: plasma cannons, antimatter missiles, graviton beams. The Krith command ships tried to evade, but they were too large, too slow. The first command ship died in a blast of blue fire. Immediately, hundreds of Krith vessels lost coordination. They continued fighting, but their perfect teamwork was gone. They became individuals, easier to target, easier to destroy. "Second command ship forward section," Chen Wei called. "Hit it now." But before the Council ships could target it, a human vessel broke from formation. The ship was burning, its hull breached in dozens of places. It had maybe minutes before total systems failure. Instead of retreating, it accelerated straight at the command ship. "What are they doing?" Shiral gasped. Jothik understood a moment before impact. Ramming speed. The human ship hit the Krith command vessel at full acceleration. The explosion lit up space like a newborn star. When the light faded, both ships were gone. And another section of the Krith swarm fell into confusion. Did they just sacrifice themselves? Kelm asked in horror. "They saved thousands of lives," Jothik said quietly. "Focus fire on the third command ship." But the humans weren't done with their insane tactics. Dozens of small craft launched from the human fleet. They were tiny things, barely visible on sensors. They flew straight at the remaining command ship, dodging defensive fire with impossible agility. "What are those?" Shiral asked. "Boarding craft," Kelm said, staring at his sensors. "They're actually going to board the command ship." The small craft attached themselves to the Krith vessel like parasites. Explosive charges blew holes in the organic hull. Human soldiers poured inside, hundreds of them, carrying weapons and moving with purpose. On the tactical display, Jothik could see the damage reports from inside the Krith ship. The humans were fighting through corridors, facing Krith warriors in close combat. It was brutal. Casualties were enormous. But the humans kept pushing forward. "They've reached the command core," Kelm reported. "They're planting charges." "All ships pull back from the command vessel," Jothik ordered. "Give them room." The Council fleet retreated. The Krith swarmed around the command ship, trying to protect it. But it was too late. The explosions came from inside. The command ship tore itself apart from within. The hull ruptured in a dozen places. Atmosphere vented into space. The massive vessel began to spin out of control, dying, and with it died the coordination of the entire Krith swarm. The remaining vessels lost all cohesion. They became a mob, dangerous but disorganized. The Council fleet and human ships cut through them with methodical efficiency. 2 hours later, it was over. The Krith were destroyed or retreating. Terath was saved, but the cost had been terrible. Jothik looked at the casualty reports and felt sick. The human fleet had entered the battle with 2,000 ships. Now they had less than 1,200. 40% losses. By council standards, that was a disaster. A defeat even if they'd won the battle. But the humans saw it differently. Terath saved, Chen Wei transmitted. His voice was tired but satisfied. 2 billion civilians safe. 3 Krith command ships destroyed. I'd call that a victory. Jathik watched the human fleet regroup. The surviving ships were battered, scarred, leaking atmosphere and fluids. But they maintained formation. They remained ready to fight. Admiral Chen, Jathik said slowly, your losses were catastrophic. You lost nearly half your fleet. There was a pause. Then Chen Wei replied, his voice soft but firm. Commander, we lost ships. But we saved lives. Human lives. Council lives. Lives we've never even met. Species we barely know. That's not a loss. That's what we came here to do. Jathik closed his eyes. He thought about council warfare, where preserving ships and minimizing casualties was the primary goal. Where retreating to save forces was considered wisdom. The humans had abandoned that entire philosophy. They threw themselves into danger not because they didn't value their lives, but because they valued other lives more. The boarding teams, Jathik asked. How many survived? Another pause. Longer this time. Out of 600 Marines who boarded the command ship, 32 made it out. The rest are gone. 32 out of 600. Jathik felt the weight of that number. Hundreds of humans had walked into certain death to save people they didn't know, and they'd done it without hesitation. On his tactical display, he watched human rescue craft moving through the debris field, searching for survivors. They were pulling council crew from damaged ships even though their own people were dying. They were towing council vessels to safety even though their own ships needed repairs. Shiral spoke quietly. They're not like us. No, Jathik agreed. They're exactly like us. They're just braver about showing it. A transmission came from council headquarters. Councillor Traven appeared on screen. Behind him, Jathik could see the full council chamber. Every member was present. Even Mazir. Commander Jathik, Admiral Chen Wei, Ambassador Okonkwo, Traven said formally. The council has witnessed the battle for Terath. We have reviewed the tactical data. We have seen the human sacrifice. He paused, looking at something off-screen. Then he looked directly at the camera. The council votes now on the question of human membership. After what we've witnessed, after what humanity has proven, the vote is merely a formality. But it must be done properly. Traven called for the vote. Hands were raised across the chamber. One by one, council members voted yes, even some who had opposed humanity before. Even Mazir, who raised his hands slowly but raised them nonetheless. The vote is unanimous, Traven announced. Humanity is granted full membership in the Galactic Council. Welcome, humans. Welcome to the stars you fought so hard to reach. On the human flagship Defiance, Admiral Chen Wei stood silently. The memorial took place in space near where the line had once been drawn. Thousands of ships gathered, human and council vessels side by side. They floated in the darkness together, united in grief and respect. Jathik stood on the bridge of the Eternal Vigil, watching the ceremony on his display. Human bodies were being released into space, each one in a sealed container marked with their name and rank. Traditional burial, Admiral Chen had explained, giving their dead to the stars they had fought to reach. 837, Kilm said quietly. That's how many humans died at Terath, Jathik nodded. 837 people who would never see their homeworld again. 837 families who would mourn. It was a small number compared to the billions saved, but each one was a universe of loss. They knew the risks, Shiral said. They went anyway. That's what makes them remarkable, Jathik replied. In the 3 weeks since the battle, everything had changed. Human technology was being shared with council scientists. Human tactical doctrine was being studied by council military academies. Human diplomats were taking their seats in the council chamber, their voices now equal to any other species. But more than that, something fundamental had shifted in how the council thought about warfare. For 80 years they had fought the Krith defensively, always reacting, always retreating. The humans had shown them a different way. Not reckless aggression but calculated risk. Not careless violence but purposeful sacrifice. Kelm pulled up new data on his display. Commander, I've been analyzing the Krith command ship that the humans boarded. The data they recovered is extraordinary. Jathik moved to the science station. What did they find? Location data. The humans found the Krith's navigation records. We now know where they're coming from, which systems they've already consumed, and potentially where their central hive is located. Jothik stared at the data. In 80 years of fighting, the Council had never been able to locate the Krith home systems. They had tried, desperately, but the Krith never left survivors who could provide that information. The humans had found it in one battle by doing what the Council considered impossible. They had gone inside a Krith ship and taken what they needed. This changes everything, Jothik said. With this information, we can plan offensive operations. Real offensives, not just defensive holding actions. The humans are already planning, Kelm said. Ambassador Okonkwo has proposed a joint task force. Human tactics combined with Council firepower. They're calling it Operation Lighthouse. Lighthouse? Human metaphor, Kelm explained. A light that guides ships home. They want to push the Krith back so far that Council worlds will be safe. A light in the darkness, Jothik considered that. For 80 years, the Council had been losing ground. Now for the first time they were talking about taking it back. Not just surviving, but winning. A transmission request came from the Council chamber. Jothik accepted it. Councillor Mazir appeared on screen, looking older than usual. The battle had aged him. Commander Jothik, Mazir said formally, I wanted to speak with you privately before the Council makes its announcement. Of course, Councillor. Mazir was quiet for a moment, his 4 hands clasped together. I was wrong about humanity. I spent 200 years convinced they were a threat. I fought against their inclusion. I believed containment was the only safe option. He looked directly at Jothik. I watched them die at Terath. I watched them sacrifice themselves for people they'd never met. And I realized something. I wasn't afraid of what humanity would do to us. I was afraid of what they would show us about ourselves. What do you mean? Jothik asked. We've become comfortable, Mazir said. Safe, we avoid risks. We value preservation over action. The Krith have been pushing us back for 80 years, and we've let them because fighting back would cost too much. We've forgotten how to truly fight for what we believe in. He gestured to something off-screen. The humans haven't forgotten. They came out of containment angry and determined. They could have fought us. They could have taken revenge for 200 years of imprisonment. Instead, they offered partnership. They offered to die for us. That takes courage we've lost. You're being too hard on the Council, Jothik said. We've saved billions through evacuation and defense. Yes, Mazir agreed. But the humans saved billions through offense and sacrifice. There's a difference. One prolongs the war. The other ends it. The transmission ended, leaving Jothik alone with his thoughts. He looked at the memorial still playing on his screen. The last of the human dead were being released to space. Behind them, human and Council ships maintained perfect formation. A final salute to those who had fallen. Shirel interrupted his thoughts. Commander, new orders from Council Fleet Command. We're being reassigned. Where? Human liaison duty. We're to work directly with the Terran Space Force, helping coordinate joint operations. She paused. Sir, they specifically requested you. Jothik felt a mixture of honor and trepidation. Did they say why? Admiral Chen said, and I quote, Commander Jothik was willing to trust us when trust wasn't easy. That's the kind of officer we need leading this new alliance. Hours later, Jothik found himself on a transport heading to the human flagship Defiance. It was his first time on a human vessel. The corridors were narrower than Council ships designed for their smaller frames. The walls were covered with displays showing Earth, a blue and green world that looked surprisingly beautiful. Admiral Chenwei met him in the conference room. The human looked tired but determined. Next to him was Ambassador Okonkwo and several other officers Jothik didn't recognize. Commander Jothik, Chen said, extending his hand in the human greeting. Thank you for agreeing to work with us. Jothik took the hand, trying to match the firm grip. The honor is mine, Admiral. Your people proved themselves at Terath. We proved we're willing to die, Chen said. Now we need to prove we can live. The war against the Krith isn't over. It's just beginning. Okonkwo activated a holographic display. It showed the galaxy, with Krith-controlled systems marked in red. There were too many red marks. But now there were also blue marks showing a proposed offensive route. Operation Lighthouse, she explained. We're not just going to push the Krith back. We're going to destroy their ability to wage war. We've analyzed their supply lines, their breeding systems, their command structure. We know where to hit them. "This will be dangerous," one of the human officers said. "We'll lose people. Lots of people. But if we succeed, we can end this war in 5 years instead of another 80. Jothik studied the plan. It was aggressive, risky, and completely against Council military doctrine. It was also brilliant. "When do we begin?" he asked. Chen smiled. 2 months. We need time to repair our fleet, train Council forces in our tactics, and coordinate logistics. But in 2 months we go on the offensive. Over the following weeks, Jothik watched the transformation of the Council military. Human instructors taught boarding tactics to Council Marines. Human engineers helped retrofit Council ships with new weapons. Human strategists shared their doctrine of aggressive, decisive warfare. It wasn't always smooth. Council species struggled with human tactics that seemed reckless. Humans struggled with Council procedures that seemed overcautious. But slowly they learned from each other. The Council became bolder. The humans became more disciplined. Kelm spent hours with human scientists analyzing the data from the Krith command ship. He reported back with growing excitement. "The humans think differently than us," he explained to Jothik. "When we encounter a problem, we try to solve it within existing knowledge. Humans ask, what if we try something completely different? It's maddening but effective." The memorial satellites that had been placed near the old line were gradually removed. In their place, new construction began. Joint defense stations crewed by both human and Council personnel, training facilities where the two forces could learn together, diplomatic outposts where ideas could be exchanged. The line itself, that invisible boundary that had separated humanity from the galaxy for 2 centuries, was officially dissolved. In its place, Council cartographers simply marked human space on their maps, integrated with Council territory as if it had always been there. 6 months after the Battle of Tareth, the Joint Fleet assembled for Operation Lighthouse. Over 3,000 ships, the largest offensive force in Council history. Half were Council vessels, half were human. All flew the new combined fleet banner, a symbol that represented both peoples working together. Jothik stood on the bridge of the Eternal Vigil, now designated as a command ship for the Joint Fleet. Shiral was at her station, her scales showing excitement rather than fear. Kelm worked with a human scientist, both of them analyzing final target data. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the communication screen. "All ships report ready, Commander. We're waiting on your order." It was a small gesture, giving Jothik the honor of starting the operation, but it meant something. It meant the humans saw the Council as true partners, not just followers. "All ships," Jothik said clearly. "Execute Operation Lighthouse. Take us to the Krith home systems. It's time to end this war." The fleet jumped to hyperspace, thousands of ships moving as one, human and Council, different but united, heading toward The massive space station called Nexus Prime floated in the darkness between stars. It was bigger than most moons and housed the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Today, 847 different alien species had gathered for one purpose. They wanted to decide what to do about humanity. Admiral Han Su stood alone in the center of the Great Council chamber. Around him, thousands of alien delegates sat in curved rows that reached up toward the ceiling. Some had scales, others had fur. Some breathed gas while others needed special suits filled with liquid. But they all had one thing in common. They all feared humans. Han Su was a tall man with gray hair and calm eyes. He wore the simple blue uniform of Earth's defense forces. No weapons, no guards, no fancy decorations. Just one human standing before the most powerful council in the galaxy. He had been waiting here for 3 hours while the aliens argued among themselves. The chamber fell silent as Supreme Commander Kelth of the Wraithen Empire rose from his seat. Kelth was 12 feet tall with red scales and yellow eyes that glowed in the dim light. Behind him sat the other leaders of the council. There was Princess Zara of the Crystal People, General Voss of the Machine Race, and dozens of others who ruled star systems across the galaxy. "Human," Kelth's voice boomed through the chamber. His words were translated into thousands of languages by the station's computers. "We have made our decision." Han Su said nothing. He just stood there with his hands behind his back, waiting. Kelth held up a crystal tablet that glowed with alien writing. "For 3,000 years, your species has been contained within your home system. The Treaty of Eternal Containment was signed after your people brought war and death to half the galaxy. We showed mercy then. We allowed you to live in peace on your little world." The alien crowd made sounds of agreement. Some hissed, others clicked, and a few made noises that sounded like breaking glass. Hansu's expression never changed. But peace has made you weak, Kelth continued. Your people spend their time making art and music. You explore your oceans and study your animals. You have forgotten how to fight. You have become harmless. Princess Zara stood up next. Her body was made of living crystal that sparkled in the chamber's light. When she spoke, her voice sounded like wind chimes. The galaxy has grown tired of watching over you. We have bigger problems now. Pirates attack our trade routes. New threats come from beyond our borders. We cannot waste resources keeping you locked in your system anymore. General Voss was next. He was a robot made of black metal with red lights for eyes. The council has voted. We offer you two choices, human. You can surrender all your weapons and technology. You can allow us to place governors on your world. You can become a protected species under our direct control. The chamber was completely silent now. Even the air recycling system seemed to have stopped making noise. Hansu waited. Or, Kelth said, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the huge room. We can finish what we started 3,000 years ago. We can turn your system into empty space. No more Earth, no more humans, no more problems. The aliens waited for Hansu to beg. They expected him to fall to his knees and ask for mercy. They thought he would cry or scream or try to bargain. Instead, something happened that none of them expected. Hansu smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was not the smile of someone who had heard good news. It was cold and sharp like a blade made of ice. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret that no one else did. The smile made Kelth take a step backward. Princess Zara's crystal body stopped sparkling. General Voss's red eyes flickered as if his systems had glitched. Across the chamber, aliens who had lived for hundreds of years felt something they had not felt in a long time. Fear. That is quite an offer, Hansu said. His voice was calm and pleasant, like he was discussing the weather. You want us to give up everything and become your pets, or you want to kill us all. Those are your only choices, Kelth said, but his voice was not as strong as before. Hansu nodded slowly. I see. And how long do we have to decide? 72 standard hours, Princess Zara said. 3 of your Earth days. 3 days, Hansu repeated. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of creatures that ruled entire star systems. That should be enough time. Enough time for what? General Voss asked. Hansu's smile grew a little wider. To consider your generous offer, of course. The way he said generous made it sound like he was talking about poison. Several aliens in the front rows shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They had expected the human to be afraid. Instead, he seemed almost amused. Captain Li Na waited in the small chamber outside the council room. She was Hansu's aide and had been watching the meeting through the security feeds. When the admiral walked out of the chamber, she fell into step beside him. Sir, she asked quietly. Send the message, Hansu said as they walked toward their small transport ship. All of it. Everything. Operation Lazarus is now active. Behind them, the council chamber erupted in noise as 800 alien species began arguing about what the human smile had meant. Some said it was just bravado. Others worried that humans had some hidden weapon. A few suggested that maybe they should have left the humans alone, but it was too late for second thoughts now. In 3 days, they would have their answer. The galaxy would learn whether humanity had really become weak and harmless during their long imprisonment, or whether 3,000 years of forced peace had given them time to prepare for something that would make their previous wars look like children's games. As their ship left Nexus Prime and headed toward the Sol system, Hansu sat in his captain's chair and continued to smile that cold, knowing smile. In 72 hours, the galaxy would remember why they had been so eager to cage humanity in the first place. The only question was whether it would be too late to matter. The message reached Earth 12 hours after Admiral Hansu left Nexus Prime. It was not sent through normal communication channels. Instead, it traveled through a network that most humans did not know existed. Hidden transmitters built into asteroids, secret relay stations on the dark side of moons, and quantum entanglement devices buried deep beneath Earth's surface all carried the same simple code. Lazarus is awake. Dr. Yangsu was eating breakfast in her small apartment in Seoul when her watch began to vibrate in a pattern she had never felt before. 3 long pulses, then 2 short ones, then 3 long again. She had been trained to recognize this signal when she was 20 years old. Now she was 55 and had almost forgotten it existed. She left her coffee on the table and walked to her bedroom closet. Behind her winter coats was a small panel that looked like part of the wall. She pressed her hand against it and felt a brief warm sensation as it scanned her DNA. The panel slid aside to reveal a narrow tunnel. Yang Su had not been in this tunnel for 30 years. She crawled through it for what felt like an hour, following lights that turned on as she approached them. Finally, she emerged into a room that took her breath away. The Prometheus facility stretched out below her like an underground city. Massive machines that had been silent for decades hummed with new life. Hundreds of people in white coats moved between workstations that displayed information in languages she barely remembered how to read. Above it all, holographic displays showed star maps and weapon designs that made her old military training come flooding back. "Dr. Yang," a voice said behind her. She turned to see General Cho Min walking toward her. The general looked exactly the same as she had 30 years ago, which should have been impossible. "General," Yang Su said, then paused. "How are you still so young?" Cho Min smiled. "One of the benefits of working down here. Time moves differently when you are preparing for a war that might never come, but it looks like it is coming after all." They walked together through the facility. Yang Su saw things that made her question everything she thought she knew about human technology. Robots that seemed to think for themselves. Computers that existed in multiple dimensions at once. Weapons that could turn matter into pure energy. "How long has this been here?" she asked. "Since the day we signed the peace treaty," Cho Min replied. "The moment we agreed to stay in our system, we began planning for the day they would break that treaty." They stopped at a massive viewing window that looked out into an even larger chamber. Inside, Yang Su could see the construction of something that hurt her eyes to look at directly. It was a ship, but it seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. Parts of it flickered in and out of reality. "What is that?" she whispered. "The first of our new fleet," Cho Min said. "We call them ghost ships. They can travel between dimensions, become invisible to any sensor, and strike without warning. We have been building them for 3,000 years. Yang Su felt dizzy. 3,000 years? But humans only live for 100 years at most. "Not all of us," Cho Min said quietly. "Some of us volunteered to be changed. To live longer, to remember the old ways, to make sure humanity would be ready when this day came." They continued walking through the facility. Yang Su saw laboratories where scientists worked on projects that seemed like magic. In one room, researchers were teaching computers how to think like humans. In another, engineers were building machines that could repair themselves and grow stronger over time. "The aliens think we have become soft," Cho Min explained as they walked. "They think 3,000 years of peace have made us weak. They see our art galleries and music halls and think we have forgotten how to fight." They stopped at another window. This one showed a training facility where soldiers practiced combat techniques that Yang Su had never seen before. They moved like dancers, but every movement was designed to kill. Some of them wore armor that seemed to be alive. Others fought without any protection at all, their skin somehow stopping bullets and energy beams. "We never forgot," Cho Min continued. "We just learned to hide it better. Every painting our artists made included hidden blueprints for weapons. Every song our musicians wrote contained encrypted military codes. Every story our writers told was actually a training manual for warfare." Yang Su stared at the soldiers below. "How many people know about this?" "Enough," Cho Min said. Not everyone needed to know the full truth, but enough people knew pieces of it. Scientists who thought they were working on peaceful projects were actually building weapons. Engineers who believed they were designing mining equipment were actually creating war machines. Teachers who thought they were studying history were actually planning strategy. They reached the facility's command center. Here, dozens of officers sat at stations that monitored the entire galaxy. Yang Su could see displays showing the positions of alien fleets, the locations of their military bases, and detailed maps of their home worlds. "You have been watching them," she said. "For 3,000 years, Cho Min confirmed. Every diplomatic mission to Earth included hidden sensors. Every trade agreement came with secret spy devices. Every cultural exchange was actually an intelligence-gathering operation. We know more about our enemies than they know about themselves." Colonel Yoon Jae approached them. He was a thin man with scars on his hands and a look in his eyes that reminded Yang Su of a hunting wolf. "General," he said with a crisp salute. The Ghost Battalion is ready for deployment. Good, Cho Min replied. How many targets? All of them, Yoon Jae said with a smile that was almost as cold as Admiral Han Su's. We have teams ready to strike every major alien military installation in the galaxy. They will never know what hit them. Yang Su looked back and forth between them. You are going to attack first? We already have, Cho Min said calmly. The attacks began the moment Admiral Han Su smiled at the Galactic Council. While they were deciding how to destroy us, we were destroying them. Engineer Bae Ki joined their group. She was a young woman with oil stains on her clothes and excitement in her eyes. General, the factories are now running at full capacity. We are producing ships and weapons faster than we ever thought possible. What factories? Yang Su asked, but she was starting to understand. Every asteroid in our system has been hollow for 2,000 years. Baek Hai explained happily. Every moon has factories built into its core. Even Earth itself is mostly manufacturing facilities now. We have been preparing for this war longer than most alien civilizations have existed. Yang Su sat down heavily in a nearby chair. This is impossible. How did we keep this secret for so long? General Cho Min sat down beside her. Because we learned the most important lesson from our first war with the aliens. We learned patience. We learned to think in centuries instead of years. We learned to smile and pretend to be harmless while we prepared for the day they would try to destroy us again. She gestured toward the displays showing alien fleets moving toward human space. They think they are bringing destruction to a weak and peaceful species. Instead, they are walking into a trap that has been 3,000 years in the making. Yang Su looked around at the massive facility, at the impossible technology, at the people who had dedicated their entire lives to preparing for this moment. What happens now? Cho Min stood up and walked to the command center. Now we show the galaxy what humanity learned during our long sleep. We show them that peace does not mean weakness. We show them that the most dangerous predator is the one that waits patiently for the perfect moment to strike. She pressed a button on the main console. Across the facility, alarms began to sound. Not warning alarms, but victory alarms. The sound of a sleeping giant finally awakening after 3,000 years of patient dreams. Signal all stations, Cho Min ordered. Begin Phase 2 of Operation Lazarus. It is time for humanity to leave our cage. Admiral Han Su walked into the Galactic Council chamber exactly 72 hours after he had left it. The same aliens sat in the same seats, but everything else had changed. Where before there had been confidence and arrogance, now there was confusion and fear. The reason for their fear was obvious. Half of the council members were missing. Supreme Commander Kelth stood up when Han Su entered, but his massive frame seemed smaller somehow. His red scales had lost their shine and his yellow eyes kept darting around the chamber as if he expected an attack at any moment. Human, Kelth said, his voice no longer booming with authority. You have returned. As promised, Han Su replied calmly. He walked to the center of the chamber just as he had 3 days ago. But this time, he was not alone. Captain Ryu Bin and Major Kang Mi flanked him, their faces showing the same cold confidence as their admiral. Princess Zara of the Crystal People was still there, but her body was flickering weakly. Several cracks ran through her crystalline form. Where are the others? She asked, her voice sounding like broken glass. Han Su tilted his head slightly. I am sorry, could you be more specific? General Voss, Kelth said urgently. Commander Thrak, Admiral Zeke, Princess Mira, dozens of our leaders. They have not been seen for the past 2 days. How unfortunate, Han Su said in the same tone he might use to comment on bad weather. I hope nothing terrible has happened to them. Dr. Lim Wan stepped forward from behind the human delegation. She was a small woman with sharp eyes who carried a tablet computer. According to our records, she said in a cheerful voice, there have been several unfortunate accidents across the galaxy in the past 72 hours. She began reading from her tablet. General Voss suffered a complete system failure while inspecting his robot army. It seems his own soldiers decided he was defective and recycled him for spare parts. Commander Thrak died when his personal flagship's life support system malfunctioned. Quite tragic, really. The gas that kept him alive was replaced with gas that dissolved his breathing organs. The remaining aliens made sounds of horror. Some began backing away from the human delegation. Admiral Zeke, Dr. Lim Wan continued, was found dead in his private chambers. Cause of death appears to be poisoning from his favorite food. Someone had replaced his usual meal with something that looked identical, but contained a toxin that only affected his species. She looked up from her tablet with an innocent smile, and Princess Mira appears to have suffered an allergic reaction to her own crown. The metal spontaneously changed its molecular structure and began producing radiation that was fatal to her particular biology. Kelth's claws extended from his hands. "You did this! You murdered them!" Hansu raised an eyebrow. "That is a very serious accusation. Do you have any proof?" "Who else could have done it?" Princess Zara demanded. "Well," Hansu said thoughtfully, "it could have been anyone who knew enough about their personal habits, their security systems, their biological weaknesses, and their daily routines. It would have to be someone who had been watching them very carefully for a very long time." He paused and smiled that cold smile again. "But you are right. It was us." The chamber erupted in chaos. Aliens jumped from their seats, some reaching for weapons that were not there. Others activated personal shields or called for their guards. But nothing happened. Their weapons did not work. Their shields did not activate. Their guards did not come. "How?" Kelth whispered. Major Kang Mi stepped forward. She was a woman with short black hair and eyes that seemed to see everything. "We have been studying you for 3,000 years, she said simply. "We know exactly how your technology works. We know your military codes. We know your weaknesses. We know everything about you." She activated a holographic display that showed real-time footage from across the galaxy. "While you were meeting here to decide our fate, we were demonstrating that your fate was already in our hands." The display showed alien military bases that had been perfectly functional 3 days ago. Now they were empty ruins. Massive war. Fleets floated dead in space, their crews missing and their weapon systems destroyed. Entire planets that had been military strongholds were now broadcasting surrender messages. "This is impossible," Princess Zara said weakly. "Our defenses are the strongest in the galaxy. Our technology is thousands of years more advanced than yours." Captain Ryubin laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "Your technology is older than ours," he said. "You stopped innovating 3,000 years ago because you thought you had already won. We never stopped improving." He activated another display that showed a human ship appearing and disappearing in different locations around an alien fleet. "Our ships exist in multiple dimensions at once. Your sensors cannot detect us because we are not entirely in your reality. Your weapons cannot hit us because we are never exactly where you think we are." Sergeant O'Gill joined the group. He was an older man with scars on his face and a calm manner that somehow made him more frightening than if he had been shouting. "Every time one of your species visited Earth," he said quietly, "we learned something new about you. Every diplomat who came to negotiate was actually teaching us how to destroy your people. Every trade representative who brought gifts was actually giving us samples of your technology to study and improve upon." Dr. Lim Wan pulled up another screen. "We know that the Vrathan Empire uses a centralized computer system to control their entire military. It only took us 47 minutes to take control of that system and turn their own armies against them. We discovered that the Crystal People's homeworld depends on a specific frequency of light to maintain their population. We simply adjusted the frequency of their sun by 0.003%. They now have approximately 6 months before their entire species becomes extinct unless they surrender. The machine race believes they are superior because they do not have emotions, but they do have programming. Programming that we have been slowly rewriting for the past millennium. Their own logic now compels them to serve humanity." Kelth fell back into his seat. "What do you want?" Hansu walked closer to the Supreme Commander. 3 days ago you offered us 2 choices. Surrender or die. We found both options unacceptable." He gestured to his team. "So we have prepared a counteroffer. You will immediately withdraw all military forces from the Sol system. You will recognize human sovereignty over a 50 light-year radius around Earth. You will pay reparations for 3,000 years of unlawful imprisonment." "And if we refuse?" Princess Zara asked, though her voice was barely a whisper. Major Kang Mi smiled. "Then you will join your missing colleagues." We have detailed plans for eliminating every species represented in this council. We know exactly how to kill each of you in ways that will look like accidents, diseases, or equipment failures. But we prefer not to, Han Su added. Dead enemies cannot learn from their mistakes. Living enemies who have been taught proper respect can become valuable allies. Sergeant O'Gill stepped forward. You wanted to know if 3,000 years of peace had made us weak. The answer is no. 3,000 years of forced imprisonment gave us time to study every one of you. We learned your languages, your cultures, your technologies, and your fears. We learned patience, Captain Ryu Bin added. We learned to plan for centuries instead of years. We learned to smile and appear harmless while we prepared to destroy anyone who threatened us. Dr. Lim Wan closed her tablet. The old Galactic Council is finished. Half of your leaders are dead, and the other half are about to surrender. The question now is whether you want to be part of the new order we are building, or whether you want to become another historical footnote. Han Su looked around the chamber at the terrified aliens. You have 24 hours to decide, but I should mention that this time the choice is not really yours to make. This time, humanity holds all the power. He turned and walked toward the exit, his team following behind him. At the doorway he paused and looked back. Welcome to the human age, he said with that cold, knowing smile. Try not to disappoint us again. The aliens chose war. 6 hours after Admiral Han Su left Nexus Prime, the largest military fleet in galactic history began moving toward the Sol system. 300,000 ships from 47 different species, carrying weapons that could destroy entire planets. They came from every direction, surrounding Earth's solar system like a closing fist. Supreme Commander Kelth led the assault personally. His flagship, the Deathbringer, was the size of a small moon and carried enough firepower to sterilize 100 worlds. Around him flew the surviving ships of the Vrathan Empire, their red hulls gleaming with weapon ports. Today we end the human threat forever, Kelth announced to his fleet. Today we finish what we should have done 3,000 years ago. But as the alien armada approached the edge of the Sol system, something impossible happened. They simply stopped existing. Fleet Admiral Shin Ho watched the destruction from the command bridge of humanity's new flagship, the Prometheus Rising. The ship existed in 7 different dimensions at once, making it invisible to alien sensors and invulnerable to their weapons. Around him, the bridge crew worked calmly at stations that controlled technology the aliens could not even imagine. Contact, reported Commander Moon A from her cybernetic station. Alien fleet detected at the system's edge. 300,000 ships approaching from all vectors. Weapons status? Shin Ho asked. All dimensional cannons are online, Captain Jiang Su replied from the weapons console. Target locks established on every enemy vessel. Shin Ho nodded calmly. Fire. The destruction was beautiful and terrible. Streams of energy that existed between dimensions reached out from hidden human ships and touched the alien fleet. Where the energy made contact, matter simply ceased to exist. Ships that had taken decades to build vanished in microseconds, leaving not even debris behind. The Deathbringer lasted longer than most because of its massive shields and armor. For almost 30 seconds, it held together as reality collapsed around it. Kelth had time to scream one last order before his flagship folded in on itself and disappeared. All targets eliminated, Jiang Su reported. No survivors detected. Time to destruction of the entire fleet? Shin Ho asked. 4 minutes and 17 seconds, Moon A replied. New galactic record. But the humans were not finished. While the aliens had been gathering their great fleet for one massive attack, humanity had been quietly positioning their own forces throughout the galaxy. Ships that could not be detected had been waiting in orbit around every major alien world for decades. Dr. Song Tae stood in the command center of the Prometheus facility, watching displays that showed the real-time status of the galactic war. Each screen represented a different star system, and on each screen the same thing was happening. Human ships were appearing out of nowhere and destroying everything the aliens had built. Phase 1 complete, she reported to General Cho Min. The alien military no longer exist. Casualties on our side? Cho Min asked. None, Song Tae replied with satisfaction. They never saw us coming. The technology that made this possible was so far beyond alien understanding that they had no way to fight back. Human ships moved through space by folding reality around themselves. They could appear anywhere instantly. attack from multiple dimensions at once, and disappear before their enemies could even realize they were under attack. Captain Jiang Su piloted his fighter, Reaper's Edge, through the debris field that had once been the Helios Collective's home fleet. His ship was not much larger than an old-fashioned car, but it carried weapons that could destroy a battleship with a single shot. "This is almost too easy," he said to his squadron over the communication system. "They fight like they are still living in the past." "That is because they are," replied Squadron Leader Park 1 from her own fighter. "While we were learning to bend reality, they were relying on the same weapons they used against our ancestors." Around them, the space battle continued. But it was not really a battle. It was more like a farmer harvesting crops. Human fighters moved through the alien formations, destroying everything they touched with casual efficiency. The aliens tried to adapt. They changed their tactics, modified their weapons, and even attempted to retreat. Nothing worked. Every time they thought they understood how human technology functioned, the humans revealed new capabilities that made their previous advantages obsolete. Commander Moon sat in her special chair on the bridge of the Prometheus Rising, her mind directly connected to the ship's computer systems. Through quantum entanglement, she was simultaneously controlling the cyber warfare, attacks on 1,000 different worlds. "Their computer networks are pathetic," she reported to Admiral Shin Ho. 3,000 years old and never properly updated. "I can rewrite their programming faster than they can even detect the intrusion." On her screens, alien defense systems were turning against their creators. Missile batteries that had been built to protect alien cities were now firing on those same cities. Robot armies that had been programmed to defend their makers were now hunting them through the streets. The Vrathan Empire's entire robotic workforce just received new orders, Moon said with amusement. They are now dismantling every military installation on their homeworld and building monuments to human superiority instead. But the most devastating weapon in humanity's arsenal was not technology. It was information. Dr. Cho Yoon had spent her entire life studying alien biology and psychology. She knew exactly which chemicals would cause each species to experience crippling fear, which frequencies of sound would disrupt their nervous systems, and which types of light would cause them to become helplessly confused. "Broadcasting terror frequencies to the Helios Collective worlds," she reported from her laboratory. "Their crystalline nervous systems are shutting down from sensory overload." "Beginning biological warfare against the Ashtar Republic," added her assistant, Dr. Kim Ray. "Their immune systems have no defense against the modified viruses we created specifically for their species." Colonel Nam Ki led the Phoenix Corps, humanity's most elite soldiers. They had been genetically modified and technologically enhanced until they were no longer entirely human. They could survive in the vacuum of space, adapt to any environment, and interface directly with alien technology. "Planetary assault on Theta 7 complete," he reported as his team emerged from the ruins of what had been the galaxy's most heavily defended fortress. "No survivors. The planet is now under human control." His soldiers moved like living weapons, each one capable of destroying an entire alien army single-handedly. They wore armor that could repair itself, and weapons that grew stronger with each enemy they killed. "The defensive grid around Proxima 9 has been neutralized," reported Major Lee, Sol from another assault team. "Their shields are down and their orbital platforms are destroyed, ready for colonization." Across the galaxy, the same scene was repeated on 1,000 worlds. Human forces appeared without warning, destroyed all resistance in minutes, and moved on to the next target. The aliens had no time to coordinate a response, no way to communicate with each other, and no weapons that could harm their attackers. In less than one day, 3,000 years of alien dominance came to an end. Admiral Shin Ho stood on the observation deck of his flagship, looking out at the wreckage of the alien fleet that had come to destroy Earth. Behind him, the blue and green planet continued to spin peacefully, its people completely unaware that the greatest war in galactic history had just been fought and won. "Status report," he said to his command staff. "All alien military forces have been eliminated." Commander Moon reported. "Their computer networks are under our control. Their homeworlds are defenseless. Resistance?" Shin Ho asked. "Minimal," Captain Jiang Su replied. "Most of them surrendered as soon as they realized what they were facing. The few that tried to fight were destroyed so quickly that others learned not to resist." Dr. Song Tae's voice came through the communication system from Earth. "Admiral, We are receiving surrender transmissions from over 200 alien governments. They are requesting terms for peace. Shinho smiled the same cold smile that had become humanity's signature. Tell them we will consider their requests. After we have finished demonstrating the price of threatening Earth, he turned to look at his staff. The aliens wanted to know if 3,000 years of peace had made us weak. They wanted to test our resolve. They wanted to see if we still remembered how to fight. He gestured toward the empty space where the alien fleet had been. I think we have answered their questions. Colonel Nam Ki's voice crackled over the communication system. Admiral, Phoenix Corps has secured the last alien stronghold in this sector. What are your orders? Begin Phase 3, Shinho replied. It is time to show the galaxy what the new order looks like. The war was over, but humanity was just beginning. Across the galaxy, species that had ruled for millennia found themselves facing a choice they had never imagined: join the new human order or face extinction. Most chose to join. The few that did not quickly discovered why resistance was futile. Diplomat Lee. So stood in the great assembly hall of what had once been the Vrathan Empire's capital world. Around her, representatives from dozens of species that had been enslaved by the reptilian overlords for centuries listened as she explained their new reality. The Vrathan Empire is finished, she said in a calm, pleasant voice that somehow carried to every corner of the massive chamber. Your former masters are dead or in hiding. You are now free to govern yourselves as you see fit. A small furry creature that looked like a cross between a bear and a rabbit raised one of its 6 arms. What is the price of this freedom? It asked in a squeaky voice, Lee. So smiled. There is no price. Freedom is a gift that humanity gives freely to all species that accept it. But surely you want something in return, said a tall, thin being with blue skin and large black eyes. Tribute, soldiers? Resources? We want only what we have always wanted, Lee So replied. The right to live in peace without being threatened by those who think they are superior to us. General Park. Young watched the diplomatic meeting through a secure communication link from his command post on the planet's surface. Around him, his staff monitored the liberation campaigns that were taking place simultaneously on hundreds of worlds. The Helios Collective's slave worlds are declaring independence, reported his aide, Major Kosan. 17 species that have been in chains for 2,000 years are now forming their own governments. Any resistance from the Crystal people? Park Young asked. None that matters, Kosan replied. Most of their military commanders committed suicide when they realized their situation was hopeless. The survivors are begging to join the Human Alliance. Park Young nodded and turned his attention to another screen. This one showed the liberation of the machine worlds, where organic species had been kept as living batteries to power robot cities. The mechanical overlords have been shut down, reported Captain Yu Min from that front. Their slaves are destroying the robot factories and building new homes for themselves. But the most important work was being done by Dr. Cho Yun and her team of biological engineers. They had spent 3 days undoing 3,000 years of genetic manipulation that the aliens had used to keep other species under control. The fear programming has been removed from the Ashtar population, she reported from her mobile laboratory. They should start developing natural courage and independence within a few weeks. What about the intelligence suppressors? Asked her assistant, Dr. Bei Yu. Already neutralized, Cho Yun replied. The species that were kept deliberately stupid by their alien masters will begin recovering their natural intelligence within days. Some of them are already showing signs of advanced problem-solving abilities. The liberation process was not without its challenges. Some species had been slaves for so long that they did not know how to be free. Others had been genetically modified to depend on their alien masters for survival. A few had been so thoroughly brainwashed that they actually preferred slavery to freedom. Colonel Nam Ki and his Phoenix Corps handled the most difficult cases. They were humanity's ambassadors to species that communicated through violence. Diplomats who spoke the language of force. The warrior clans of Epsilon 5 have accepted our terms. He reported from a world where combat was considered the highest form of art. After we defeated their greatest champions in single combat, they recognized humanity as the new alpha species. Casualties? General Park Young asked. None on our side, Nam Ki replied. Their weapons could not penetrate our armor, and their combat techniques were about 2,000 years out of date. It was like fighting children. What about the Sigma Collective? Park Young asked, referring to a hive mind species that had enslaved dozens of worlds. We introduced a new idea into their collective consciousness, Nam Ki said with satisfaction. The concept of individual freedom. Their hive mind is currently tearing itself apart as individual members break away and form their own thoughts. But humanity's greatest weapon in the liberation campaigns was not military force or advanced technology. It was hope. Ambassador Choi Jun stood before the newly formed Council of Free Worlds, a gathering of species that had been enemies for millennia, but were now working together under human guidance. The old galaxy was built on fear, she told them. Fear of the strong by the weak, fear of change by the powerful, fear of each other by everyone. We offer you something different. We offer you a galaxy built on cooperation. A representative of the former slave species raised a tentacle. How do we know you will not become like our previous masters? How do we know you will not enslave us in turn? Choi Jun gestured to the viewing screen that showed Earth in the distance. Because we remember what it feels like to be caged. Because we know that true strength comes not from controlling others, but from helping them become strong themselves. She activated a holographic display that showed the new trade routes, communication networks, and defensive alliances that humanity was building. We do not want to rule you.
We want to work with you.
We want to build something that has never existed before. A galaxy where every species can reach its full potential. Dr. Song Tae monitored the psychological profiles of the liberated populations from her command center on Earth. What she saw amazed her. Species that had been broken by millennia of oppression were healing with remarkable speed once the sources of their trauma were removed. The recovery rates are exceeding all projections, she reported to the Human Leadership Council. These species are not just returning to their pre-slavery states. They are evolving beyond anything they were before. Explain, said General Cho Min. The aliens kept them suppressed, but they also inadvertently strengthened them, Song Tai explained. Species that survived 3,000 years of oppression have developed incredible resilience. Now that they are free, they are channeling that resilience into rapid advancement. She showed them data that illustrated her point. The Ashtar Republic has advanced their technology by 500 years in just 1 month. The former slave worlds of the Sigma Collective have formed a research alliance that is producing scientific breakthroughs daily, and they are grateful, added Diplomat Lee. So from her position at the new galactic capital, grateful in a way that ensures their loyalty will last for generations. But not all of the galaxy's former rulers accepted their new situation peacefully. Some alien species attempted to regroup and launch counterattacks against human forces. They quickly learned that 3,000 years had not just given humanity time to prepare weapons, but also time to understand their enemies completely. Captain Jiang Su led a small squadron of fighters against the last Vrathan holdout fleet. His 12 ships faced 300 enemy vessels in what the aliens thought would be an easy victory. They still do not understand, he said to his squadron as they approached the enemy formation. They still think numbers matter more than technology. The battle lasted less than 10 minutes. The human fighters moved through the alien fleet like ghosts, appearing and disappearing at will. Their weapons turned the massive alien ships into expanding clouds of gas. The few enemy vessels that tried to retreat found that human ships could follow them anywhere, even into other dimensions. Last enemy ship destroyed, reported his wingman, Lieutenant Park Soo. No survivors. But the most devastating defeats of the alien remnants came not from military action, but from the defection of their own people. Species after species that had served the old empire chose to join humanity instead. Major Kang Mi stood before a group of former Vrathan officers who had requested asylum on Earth. These were beings that had once been humanity's enemies, now begging for protection from their own people. Why should we trust you? She asked them bluntly. Their leader, a scarred veteran named Commander Vex, lowered his massive head. Because we have seen what you do to your enemies and what you do to your friends. You destroy those who threaten innocent people, but you protect those who choose peace. You killed billions of our people in the old wars, Kang Mi said. Yes, Vex replied, and we were wrong. We thought strength meant domination. You have shown us that true strength means protection. We want to learn from you. Kang Mi studied the group of reptilian warriors. Learning requires humility. Are you prepared to start at the bottom and work your way up through honest service? We are, Beck said simply. And so the transformation of the galaxy continued. Species that had been enemies for millennia learned to work together. Technologies that had been hoarded by the powerful were shared freely with all. Worlds that had been strip-mined and polluted were restored to their natural beauty. Dr. Huang Rui oversaw the massive reconstruction projects that were turning dead worlds into gardens. The environmental restoration is proceeding ahead of schedule, she reported. Most of the former industrial planets will be habitable again within 5 years. What about the species that were made extinct by the old empire? Asked her colleague, Dr. Lim Jin. We are bringing them back, Huang Rui said with satisfaction.